So Don Quixote was written in 1605, and basically it tells the story of this guy named Don Quixote. He's mostly kind of bored, and he reads a lot, and his favorite thing to read are chivalric romances, so stories of knights in shining armor. And he reads so many that his brains dry up, and he goes crazy. And he decides that he's going to be a knight in shining armor. And he's going to go out and make the world great like it used to be. Some amazing golden age in the past that probably never really existed, only exists in his stories. And so he gets his old horse, he gets his grandpa's old armor, and then he hops on his horse and he goes out and he has some adventures. He comes back, he gets a neighbor named Sancho who just doesn't really have anything to do with his life either. And he keeps trying to make everything better, but there's really, the problems that he's trying to solve don't exist. And so he ends up getting mostly into trouble and kind of misreading the world. He thinks that the inn is a castle. He thinks that the windmills famously are giants. He thinks that the sheep are hosts of armies, and so he goes and kills a bunch of sheep, and the shepherds are all mad at him, and he mostly just kind of gets himself into a lot of trouble. At the end of the second book, he just comes home a mess. And then there's a period of 10 years where there's no story written. And then Cervantes publishes a second volume where Quixote and Sancho go back out into the world. But now they go into a world that knows that the first volume of Don Quixote exists. So he's kind of a celebrity where he lives because people have read this story. And now people are starting to join in the game. And he has to use less and less of his imagination and becomes more and more like he's living in a virtual reality or something. It becomes very wild and super postmodern. It was written in 1605 and then 1615. And in that period of time in Spain, kind of amazing period of time called the Spanish Golden Age. And it's in that time when Cervantes writes. He's part of a really broad, kind of amazing period of time where we have playwrights and painters like Velázquez, playwrights like Lope de Vega, who wrote 800 to 1,000 plays, like full-length plays. And Cervantes and Lope were sort of rivals. And then Cervantes writes this book kind of in this kind of flowering of culture. And Don Quixote is not super famous when it comes out. I mean, it's successful and becomes translated really pretty quickly. But I don't think anybody at the time realized what it would become, which is, the first modern novel. Don Quixote, when it was written, was super modern. So the best translations are going to feel like you're just reading a novel, not like you're reading an old, fancy novel. Although Don Quixote, when he speaks, he uses fancy, flowery language because he's trying to recover the language of his novels that he's reading. You can read it on just a million different levels, but it should be kind of at least in equal parts, I guess. It's really funny, but the more you kind of think about it, you realize this is really sad. I mean, there's something beautiful in what Quixote is doing and kind of seeing beautiful things in things that are ordinary. So it's not an inn, it's really a castle. And isn't that great? And many people have been kind of romantic about Don Quixote. In fact, Don Quixote becomes really famous during Romanticism, like 19th century Romanticism, because people think, oh, wouldn't everything be so beautiful if we were all like Don Quixote? And we didn't see, peasant women, but we saw queens. And we didn't see just regular inns, we saw castles. And there's something really kind of beautiful in this filter that he's looking at the world through. But also, it causes himself and all the people around him so much heartache. He's really sick. And, he gets beat up all the time. Like, really, he's an old man. And he's just getting pummeled by people. And then, in fact, the very end of the novel, he recognizes, I was crazy. And he has this what to me feels very redemptive moment where he says, I see the world clearly now. I'm not Don Quixote. My name is Alonso Quijana. I just want to be a good man and kind of die peacefully. And I think it's really beautiful, but in many kind of rewrites or film versions or theatrical versions of Don Quixote, they never mention the end, because the thing that's great is the windmills and this dreaming the impossible dream and going up against all odds to try to achieve some great vision that he has. There's a really interesting kind of thing that happens between Sancho and Quixote, because in the beginning, Sancho is a total realist, and Quixote is just, he's living in the clouds when he sees the windmills, and Sancho says, those are not windmills, or those are not giants, those are windmills. But over time, Quixote promises Sancho that he will give him an island. So I'm going to be an emperor, and I'm going to give you an island. You get to be the governor of the island. And there's a part in book 2 when they meet there's a duke and a duchess. They're very rich. They're apparently very bored. They have essentially unlimited resources, and they know who Quixote is. And they create a whole fantasy world for him to live in, where he doesn't have to use his imagination anymore. And he gets to be the governor of this community. And Sancho then kind of falls into the fantasy, and it's actually Quixote who becomes very wise about all of this and kind of realizing this is not as cool as I thought it was going to be. And so there's this reversal, but it's really beautiful to kind of watch the whole thing unfold. It's really complicated, and Cervantes has this really beautiful kind of weaving of their personalities. Don Quixote is amazing, and Cervantes is amazing. His insight into human nature, it borders on, kind of otherworldly or divine or something. There's something truly astounding in his ability to kind of tap into who we are as humans. I think more people should read the book. One of the things that makes it so kind of mind-blowingly amazing is that Cervantes is reaching into all the literary genres that exist at his time. Poetry and theater and all different kinds of poetry and chivalric stuff and picaresque stuff. And he's drawing from all these different wells, and he weaves this sort of amazing tapestry of stuff. So it's a book about books. It's a book about reading. He reads, and obviously he goes crazy because he's read all these chivalric romances. But it's also about reading as kind of an act, reading the world. And the problem is that for as great a reader as Quixote is, because he's read a lot of things, he doesn't read the world very well. He's a really terrible reader of the world. He doesn't see the world for what it is. And he's always being fooled. And the world today is complicated. And we need to be great readers of the world. And every time I read Quixote, regardless of whether I'm approaching it really romantically or not, it always reminds me that I need to be really careful about the way that I read the world and try to see it as clearly as possible. In the end, the thing that makes Don Quixote good is that regardless of whether he's tilting at windmills or giving Sancho kind of really amazing advice, he's always trying to be a good person. And I think that really resonates. It does with me. He wants to be good. He wants the world to be a better place. And he may not always go about it in the best way, and he may cause lots of problems in trying to do it, but he really is earnest in trying to be good and to make the world a good place. And I think that's a thing that can resonate also with a lot of people.